Good evening and welcome. This is one-on-one, a laid-back program on Prime TV where I talk to colleagues of mine and we simply trace their development. My guest on the program is a very good friend of mine, Joseph Shamatutu. We knew each other long back, from the Cape Belt and then Lusaka, and then he decided to go into the diaspora. He's been away for well over 20 years, now living in Canada. He's my guest on one-on-one. Good evening, Joe, and welcome.
Thank you, Frank.
Good to see you. A far cry from the Quito days.
Yes, indeed. It's a long time since Quito, but looking back, it's been a life well lived. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are your base times, going back in Quito? Let me put it this way. What shaped your early childhood, especially on the Cape Belt?
The multi, I don't know whether culture is a proper word, but the fact that there were so many people from so many different places, Kitwe or the Copper Belt has always been the melting pot of Zambia. So that had a great influence on me and how I viewed the country as a whole, because I had friends from everywhere. Yeah. Language or tribe was never a factor. Mm-hmm. You played with everyone. Yeah. And therefore I grew up appreciating people for who they are, as an individual. Mm-hmm. Those that you didn't get along with, it had nothing to do with ethnicity or whatever. Yeah. It was because that person was just disagreeable with you or you were disagreeable with them.
Was the Copper Belt the greatest complementary to President Kaunda's One Zambia, One Nation?
Indeed, I think it was, because as I said, on the Copper Belt you found everyone. Mm-hmm. And people lived as one. Mm-hmm. Of course, a majority of people in Kitwe worked for the mines. Yeah. And Bali was mine. Yeah. That's all that mattered. Yeah. They went to work, left their families at home, and us as young children in the compounds, you'd play with everyone. A mother cooks. You are all invited to eat, and Zambia was really a nation on the Copper Belt. That's where it came from. That is where One Zambia, One Nation was really exemplified in the many families on the Copper Belt that came from all over the country, attracted to the Copper Belt by the mines.
Your school, days, and in saying so, at what stage did you realize that school, good education, is bound to open the doors in future?
For me, my father started out in life as a teacher. Yeah. In fact, when he moved to the Copper Belt, he moved to join the mines, which had a unit which was teaching English as a second language to miners, which then they developed into using television as a medium for teaching English as a second language to miners. So being the son of a teacher, you had no choice but to make sure that you paid attention to school. To the extent that there were times you didn't see the value of it. Yeah. But you knew that if you didn't do well, you'll be in trouble. So you did certain things because you were avoiding the trouble, not because you knew the value of education. But as I grew up, of course, we grew up in an era where education guaranteed you a future. Mm-hmm. So you strived to get to that level where you get the education, in whatever field you wanted, and you knew that at the end of the day, it's going to get you places. So that motivated you to work towards achieving that goal.
What triggered you following the path of engineering?
A fate and accident, both at the same time. As I said, my father was on the copper belt, and by then he had moved back into government. They had educational television in Kitwe, and he was working for educational television. But fate, just when I was finishing school, my father got very ill. And almost to the point of death, and I felt that I needed, being the eldest son, I needed, to pull my act together to look after the family. And I went to the Kitwe studios looking for a job.
Wow.
That then head of engineering took me on as a technical assistant in the engineering section. But as time went on, I was convinced by colleagues that I could actually also work on the other side and start doing programs like a discotheque, Over to You on radio. Now that's going back years, right? So that's how the other side of me in broadcasting developed. But as time went on, the late Churchill Mutale, who was the chief engineer of the Zambia Broadcasting Services at one time, helped me get a scholarship from government to go and study engineering in the UK. And as I say, after that, everything is history.
Excellent. How did you balance the two, being an engineer and also being on camera, being on the screen?
It wasn't a question of balancing. It was more really a question of opportunity. I was being paid as an engineer. I was never paid as a television presenter or radio presenter. But it was the opportunity that the production people saw that they could use this resource, that resource being me, to help in television interviews and other productions. I mean, for example, even television soccer commentary, it was not as if I started off with any intention of doing that. I would go to football matches as a technical person to assist in the outside broadcasting aspects. I remember the days where I would be sitting next to Dennis Liwewe and he's commenting. And in the passion of the moment, Dennis would say, "What do you think about this, Joe?" And I would make a comment. And eventually that led to me getting to start doing football commentary on television, not because it was planned, but it's just because I happened to be there, and we could kill two birds with one stone. Rather than send a television commentator, well, you send the engineer and let him do the commentary also, and that's how I got into that. So most of my production work, as I said, was really the system being able to kill two birds with one stone, not that it was intentional that I must pursue that part of the broadcasting profession.
You worked with some very talented, people. People like, Jeff Sitali, Sweden, Charlie Bastam, Mando. Tell us how you developed, this relationship and the impact, they had on you, in terms of, media.
Jeff Staley and Charles Mando were probably the biggest influence for me in terms of television production aspect. Jeff was a perfectionist in production. In fact, my starting to present around the Copper Belt with the Sweden Hangala was a project Jeff identified. And he put us through the paces as to what he wanted to see out of that program, how we dressed, who the guests were. And he made around the Copper Belt the showpiece that it became. Then there was Charles on the other side.
Yeah, amazing.
Brilliant interviewer. I up to this point in time, I've never known somebody who would take any subject and be an expert in it without ever having had any knowledge of it.
Sometimes without even preparing for the work.
So you looked at people like Charles and Jeff as an inspiration. You looked at them to say, if I'm going to do something like this, I want to be like them. I would have loved to be able to conduct interviews like Charles, you know, as you say, without preparation. Jeff was an artist, a perfectionist. If you go back, you look at the commercials, the influence he had in television productions and even stage plays and things like that. He always strived for perfection, and it was perfection that very few of us who were in the media were able to achieve. We could only look in awe at the excellence of the work, and I miss them dearly.
You know, before I take you back, you know, to I introduce, you know, your other facet, you know, being from the theater. These two gentlemen and many more, you know, that we know about from the past were super, you know, talented. Those little technology, if any. Today it's different. We still are very talented, you know, people, and with technology, but the standards cannot really be compared to your time. How do you reconcile this?
I think it's the opportunities we had in our time. As I said, if you went to University of Zambia or whatever university, when you graduated, you were almost guaranteed that you will get a job. And people at that time had time to devote to making sure that whatever job it was, you were doing it well. Remember, we had the parastatal sector at that time. People who went into the parastatal sector went in and were put into management trainee positions probably for a period of 2 years, and they made sure that by the time they were finishing that training, they were competent individuals. Take broadcasting, for example. Whether production or engineering, we had opportunity. Most people in the industry or Zambia Broadcasting Services went to places like Thomson Foundation in the UK and other places like that, where you were able to see production of programs done to a certain standard. And because of that experience, you came back to Zambia and implemented the same techniques that you observed whilst on training abroad. That exposure set a bar which we strived to achieve in the work that we did. And I think when I look at the productions now, I think where it's, if one can say it's lacking, where it's lacking, I think it's setting the bar and the exposure to different production techniques. We got by with the technology that existed. The people in broadcasting now and other media, they are getting by with technology that is current and available to them. But to finesse the product, I think they need to be encouraged to look at a broader view of, this is what I'm producing now. When I compare it to a similar product elsewhere, how does it compare? How does it stand? Are there areas where we can improve? And it goes even to print media. Are we actually getting the editors to look at the copy before it goes to print and actually certify that this copy is ready for print? You remember in the old days, those of us who were in broadcasting, we dreaded Sunday Times because you knew that Mata Painter
will review your performance. You never slept on a Saturday.
So we had that, and we to avoid Mata Painter, you made sure you did your homework before you did your presentation. So I think it's a setting of standards, a setting of the bar. We must constantly aim to push the bar a bit higher every time, and make sure that our people are exposed to the highest standards in the industry, so that they have something to aim for.
Still on the issue of comparison, Joel, during your time, you related, you fraternized with politicians, like V.J. Mwanga, people of authority, like the late President, Chiluba. But unlike today, there was no affinity in terms of bias, for lack of a better way of putting it. You were professional, people, whether you were a friend of a politician, or not. Today it's a different, ball game. What made you so professional? Did you understand your role, as a media, person, that your role was to operate professionally, which I'm afraid today there's so many influences?
Well, I think, to be fair to the current scenario, I would say this and put it as a caveat. We operated for a good part under one-party state,
right?
And therefore, there was no other horse in the race other than within that framework.
But there was still a lot of professionalism.
And therefore, when you had an interview, for example, with a politician, you could ask tough questions without you being seen as asking questions on behalf of another political party. That in itself helped us develop the courage to be able to have difficult discussions with the politicians, because we had that latitude to go a step further, because you didn't fear that you'd be accused of being a representative of another political party. And I think that's the dilemma that the current crop of media personnel may be facing, that they don't have the courage to ask the questions which may be interpreted as you are asking on behalf of another political party, and therefore that restrains them from doing that. But I think we need to be brave, and nonetheless ask those questions. Are there consequences? The chances are that yes, there may be consequences, but for as long as you are coming from an honest place, as it's said in the Bible, the truth shall set you free. There may be immediate consequences, but if you stick to the truth and not set out to embarrass or belittle a politician because you want to serve an ulterior motive, I think you can still afford to be brave and ask the difficult questions. After all, the politicians are accountable to the people who have put them in those positions, not to the journalist who's asking the questions. Yeah.
You move away from the Copper Belt. Why did you move away, and what did you miss most, when you left the Copper Belt to come to Lusaka?
Well, again, moving from the Copper Belt was not a decision on its own. I left the Copper Belt because I had to go to school, further education, which in my case I was sent to England to go and pursue my engineering studies. So that is what made me move from the Copper Belt. At the time I came back as a graduate engineer, there wasn't really a position I could hold on the Copper Belt, so I had to be in Lusaka, where those positions for graduate engineers existed, and that's how I found myself in Lusaka.
You developed, when you moved to Lusaka, you developed amazing relationship with the late Charles Mando. You also developed an amazing relationship with Mumbaka Pumpa, brother, okay. Tell us about this and your transition. You're a jack of all trades. Your transition now into theater.
Again, it's probably more being in the right place at the right time. Charles, mind you, I knew from Kitwe because Charles was based in Kitwe. But by the time I came back from school, he had also moved to Lusaka. And so had Jeff, who was still involved in theater at the time. So my going into theater really came out of Festac 77, Festival of Arts and Culture, that was held in Nigeria. Yes. There was a production that Zambia was taking to Festac, and Jeff and Brother K encouraged me to audition to be part of the team that went to Festac, and that's how I got into that. Again, it was simply being around people who were involved in the arts, who looked at me and said, "Hey, you could probably do this," and I gave it a shot, and that's how I ended up going to Festac with Brother K. And
your technical side, the broadcasting engineer, did not suffer because of your indulgence into theater?
No. There seemed to be a lot of time to do lots of things those days. I don't think I ever let that side of my work suffer. As I said, my real day job was an engineer, but I also had a very supportive a team of people above me. As I said, Led Checho, Mutale, Eddie Mupeso, Mr. Samba, I don't know if he's still alive now. So I had all these people around me who were senior to me, who were very encouraging in any work that I did. And in terms of production, they simply said, let him do it. There's no harm. But from the engineering side, they made sure they gave me projects which developed me. One of my when I look back at my history as a broadcasting engineer, one of the crowning moments for me was to represent Zambia at the International Telecommunications Union Conference on frequency allocation for the FM band. So all the frequencies that are currently used on FM radio in Zambia. I was the person who went to Geneva for that conference for the allocation of of those frequencies. So from that, it probably tells you that my superiors had confidence in me at a very young age to send me to Geneva to go and be part of a team of international experts that was allocating frequencies worldwide for that matter.
Amazing.
We I mean, for example, in Livingston, we had to consider that if we give a frequency in Livingston, we must make sure that it does not interfere with the frequency across the border. You looked at things that would call the third harmonic. You had to make sure that the third harmonic of the Livingston frequency does not interfere with the frequency that has been allocated to the, is it called Victoria on the other side? So, and all over the country, even in Lusaka, how many frequencies are you going to have? And you must make sure that when radio station 1 in Lusaka turns on its transmitters, it doesn't interfere with radio station 2 in the same city and across the country.
Because of you, Joseph, we must commend you. Today, because of the many frequencies and the decision, the policy of Chiluva to liberalize the media space, we've got over 100 radio stations. Where you sit there, is this a good thing to have so many radio stations? Have they served their purpose? Has radio served its purpose?
I think first and foremost, it was good that eventually the government relented and set the media space free. I was an early adapter to wanting to go into private broadcasting. But at the time, government was still very concerned about having independent media. But when they did decide, yes, they gave as many licenses as people needed. But I think over time, as the nation develops, all these radio stations will find their resting place. Some will go out of business simply because they can't support that model because they are not getting the audience and the advertising they need to survive. So eventually, I would like to think that we may have started off with 100, but over time, we will see that whittled down,
the fall off
to maybe the 30, 20 strong institutions that will be able to provide the kind of service everybody is looking for.
As a rider to that, Joseph, is social media now a serious threat to the future of radio? Formal radio as you know it, as we know it?
I wouldn't call it a threat. I would simply put it this way. Social media is developing at such a fast pace that people in broadcasting need to be agile. They must think on their feet and take opportunity of what social media presents. I mean, just think of the cell phone. Your cell phone now is able to carry information which at one time would take this room filled with computer equipment. You've now got that on your cell phone. And this is what social media is doing. People are able to do much more on their own without necessarily having to sit in front of a radio or in front of a TV set. So media houses, broadcasting included, must be able to think strategically in terms of where do we see our product, how do we see our product being delivered to our audience in 5 years' time? Are we going to go the streaming way, where your audience simply turns on their phone and listens to the news as and when they want, or do you stay back and think that people are going to sit at home and look at their television sets? I think we are already seeing that the delivery of content is shifting the landscape. You look at giants like Netflix and Prime TV, Prime Video, by Amazon. They are all moving to buying production houses so that they've got sufficient content for their audience to be able to watch programs if and as when they decide, not because some television station has told you that there will be news at 10. Well, at 10 I want to do something else. I want to watch that news when I want.
Absolutely.
So that's how we need to look at the development of social media and the impact it's going to have on the industry. It's the deciding factor is going to be your viewer or your listener. And you must adapt to make sure that you are ready to provide that service as the listener demands. If you don't, they will listen to somebody else.
Absolutely. There's no doubt there's so much good, on social media, and there's also, some bad stuff. Some, users, practically destroy the moral fiber of others. And there's been talk by the permanent secretary in this country, that perhaps there's need to regulate, social media. Your take on that?
Regulation of public discourse is a very difficult thing to achieve. You can put rules and regulation on an institution, like a television station. You can put those controls. From a technical aspect, for example, you can put a delay of what is being broadcast. So that if I said something wrong now, because we've put a delay on the circuit, the director and producer upstairs can cut that so that it doesn't go out. But in the public domain, once you put those rules and regulations, all that is going to happen is that people will go underground, and they will still, the vitriol will still carry on underground. The dark web is probably as big as, maybe even bigger than the web, the internet that you and I use. But millions of people operate on the dark web, which is more difficult to regulate. So how are you going to do that? We are a connected world now. So you can't one day then decide, because of the vitriol that is going on online, we are going to switch off the internet. Well, you can't do that anymore, because so many things in our daily lives require us to be able to access information from all over the world and almost immediately. So you can regulate to a certain extent, as I said, but you will never be able to regulate to 100%. I think on an individual basis, we need, as each individual, as each Zambian, we need to regulate ourselves and realize that the freedom of expression that you desire to say whatever you want must be also be respectful of the freedom of expression of the next individual.
Yeah.
So if you are going to be nasty to somebody else, they'll be nasty to you also. So what is the best route out of that? Let's have respectful differences in our discussions, but you can never regulate stupidity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Before we leave the broadcasting world, Joseph, back to the theater, this family of talented people, the brother K's, the Jeff Sitalis, the late Hagai Chisulo, Malamanfumu.
Yeah.
Very intelligent. Again, you were one family. What stands out? What memories stands out from this extended family of yours that you had?
To tell you the truth, mostly when I think about the past, it sobers me up because so many of my colleagues are gone, and I say to myself, Lord, why me?
Why me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do I have another purpose that I do not yet know?
Yeah.
Because I don't know how, in the face of so many deaths, if you look at broadcasting, you and I are probably the two that are left from our era.
Yeah, I think we were about 23 or so.
Yeah.
Over 20, talented people. Yeah. I think it's just you, me, and
Kenneth.
Kenneth Maduma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody else
is gone.
Is gone.
Yeah.
So it's a memory that is filled with a lot of heartache for me. I miss all those colleagues dearly. I used to imagine in retirement having all these guys around. I mean, can we imagine if Charlie today, Charlie Bastamando,
and would have graduated from hustling.
Yeah.
to something else.
To something else. Yeah. So Jeff, I'm still
in shock.
Because his death, I don't know. Only Lord knows.
I really understand you. If you guys were today, you would have been making a lot of money as a rider to that. Impressed the way the media has evolved. You see all these actors now on DSTV making great money. Your impression on how they've developed?
I'm happy to see that we are able to produce content which fits in with our society. It's very important as a country and as a people to be able to see yourself. The bad side of you and the good side of you. It's important that we see that for a long time, television and film, we were made to see beauty or success only through images of other people, more precisely white people. And whatever, even our judgments as to what beauty was, we only saw it in the faces we saw on television, which was not healthy. So the development of these programs where we are able to see ourselves is good for the psyche. Let's laugh at each other. Let's see the funny side of each other. Let's see beauty as we define it by our own standards, not a foreign standard. So I'm happy in seeing local content being developed. Can it be done better? Yes, it can. And as I said, constant exposure, constant practice will get us to that level. You look at Nollywood.
Yeah.
A few years ago, the productions coming out of Nigeria were.
Yeah.
But now,
yeah,
you are getting content which is comparable to anything that is produced anywhere in the world. I was very happy when Netflix carried a production from Zambia.
Yeah.
I was really so proud of it.
Yeah.
It made me feel as if I was part of that production, and that showed that we are already getting to that level where we can participate at an international level and able to produce material that can be viewed anywhere around the world. So I'm really happy and proud of that landscape developing in the country. We do need local content desperately.
I'm talking to my good friend Joseph Shamatutu, a telecommunications engineer. We worked together, the then Zambia Broadcasting Services, and then he went into the diaspora in 2000, starting from England, and then eventually in Canada. He's been in Canada since. We just going back to memory lane. This is One-on-One, and when we come back, Joe moves to Zambia Airways. Join us very shortly on One-on-One. Welcome back. This is One-on-One, and my guest today is Joseph Shamatutu, telecommunications engineer, broadcasting engineer, now living in diaspora in Canada. 1987, God beckons, Zambia Airways beckons, come fly with me. How did this happen?
Again, a coincidence. The job was advertised. I was in government. Zambia was parastatal. Yeah. Those days they would publish even the salary range.
Yeah.
Looked at it and I thought, well, I could make more money.
I like that. So that's a good one.
I applied, and fortunately, I was the successful candidate.
Yeah.
And that's really how I moved to Zambia Airways. Having moved, it presented a new challenge in terms of what my capabilities as an engineer were at the time, and I think it was necessary because then it broadened my experience in the engineering field, in the sense that I had to look at implementing or planning and implementing telecommunications systems that were not directly related to broadcasting, but it was still telecoms. So that gave me a new experience, which was immensely enjoyable, because we were in charge of all the telecommunication needs of the airline, all ground-based telecommunications, and the we had a radio system also called Ndeke radio, where we could speak to aircraft in the air wherever they were, anywhere in the world. So that from a professional standpoint was it was a good move.
Yeah.
It broadened my
The Chiluba government comes in, and I remember, I'm sitting there, at the media, waiting for General Mianda to come, and to our surprise, he closes the airline. Not many governments close a national flag, and a national flag which was doing fairly well, because not many airlines, make a profit. Joseph, what was your reaction?
Okay, so I have to first of all say I'm an interested party in this subject, so my views may be stronger than somebody else. First, that is the worst decision, as far as I'm concerned, the government could have ever made. It's been 30 years now. A lot of my former colleagues in Zambia Airways have passed on. But the pain is still there, that the government of the day decided to get rid of Zambia Airways despite the information that was available. Zambia Airways had sufficient assets to meet the problems it faced. But even in the even if we took the argument that no, those assets were not sufficient, look at what happened regionally. Not any other country in the region, despite the problems their national carriers were going through, ever took the decision to get rid of their national carrier. That decision destroyed a thriving industry. Zambia Airways had reached a level of competence which could only probably in Africa be compared at the time to Ethiopian Airways and maybe South African Airways. We had some of the best pilots, some of the best ground engineers. Yes, we did make some missteps, and we were struggling financially, particularly after we got the ATR 42 aircraft. But there was a solution to that, and as I said, I think government had a duty to bail us out. But I suspect the argument was that that did not fit in with what the IMF and others wanted to see. But you look back in time. British Airways at the time was struggling. They didn't get rid of it. So as I said, I've declared interest. It's a very painful decision. And up to this day, I'll probably go to my grave saying the government made the wrong decision in closing the airline.
Let me broaden the question, Joe, even starting from individuals, transcending to governments. What is this that makes us, Africans, I'm trying to choose my words properly as a diplomat, make suspect decisions. And this is also relative to way we relate to successful, Zambians. We tend to look away from them and look at something. It's kind of a mixed grill question.
A good part of it, I think, is colonial legacy. I forget the name of one of Hitler's lieutenants who used psychology in transmitting hate. And he said, you repeat something 8 times, it sticks in the brain. we were colonized for quite a long period of time, and we started seeing success only in the white person.
Yeah.
And I think it's that hangover which makes us feel that if a message is coming from a white person, then it's the right message. If it's coming from your brother, then it's a wrong message.
Yeah.
So I think we need a mind shift.
Yeah.
We need to question certain things which we are being asked to do. For example, the Bretton Woods institutions.
Yeah.
They prescribe measures which really hurt our people, but we go for them. So we need to get to a stage where we say, I would rather starve than do this to my own people. We need to question certain things that are presented to us and use our own people. We've got a lot of brilliant Zambians. Brilliant Zambians working all over the world, working here in Zambia. When we have these issues, let's use those resources. Let's use those Zambians that are here, that are in the diaspora, and say, as a country, what do you think we should do over this particular issue? We want to borrow money from these guys. Is that the only option we have? They are telling us we shouldn't subsidize mealie meal. Well, I tell you that is wrong. Mealie meal is what our people depend on. Ask them, are you telling us that you don't subsidize food where you're coming from? These guys dump tons of agricultural products in the sea in order to maintain a price. Why are we not being allowed to do that? And is their money worth the suffering of our people? So we need to start trusting each other. We need to start believing in our own instincts and start believing that we have Zambians that are seeing these problems and they actually have viable solutions to those problems. Before we rush to kids who are doing their PhDs at Harvard, come here as advisors, and he wants to go and defend his thesis at Harvard, and we take that as gospel truth. There are Zambians here who can outthink that kind of person. Let's use our own people to find solutions to our problems. We were talking earlier, and I was saying, you are not going to get an engineer in Silicon Valley to sit there and start thinking, how can I cook Nshima better? He won't, because he can't relate to the Nshima. But a Zambian can relate to that. So that's the challenge we need to give to the Zambian engineer, to the Zambian entrepreneur, and say, we have this problem. Think about it. How could we improve the lot of our people?
Briefly, as a rider to that, Joseph, you're worried about our going to bed with IMF right now? And also, what are your thoughts on the recently clinched, debt structure agreement?
I'll start with the debt restructuring agreement. We had already started going down that line, going a few years back. I think it all started in 2021 or 2020 or something like that. So we had no choice but to follow through and finish it. Do I think necessarily that going the IMF way was the only option? No, I don't. I think if we had the time we could have thought of different approaches in how we get out of this debt issue. Zambia as a country, God has given us a lot of resources. And I think we can leverage those resources to solve some of the problems that are affecting us as a country, without necessarily having to borrow money from the IMF. When you look at our mines, for example, the mineral ore that is underground is not worth 1.3 million.
No.
It's worth much more than that. So we've got the resource. Are we getting value for money when we go and borrow from the IMF 1.2? It's a bigger discussion. I'm sure the technocrats in the Ministry of Finance and other government departments know what they are doing. But I'm glad that we've gotten over this hurdle. Because the country needs it. We need to start looking forward. But I think we also, at the same time, having seen what debt does, we need to start thinking of ways of making sure that we are exploiting our minerals to our benefit without necessarily having to depend on so much foreign money to extract our own minerals.
I hear you. Because of time, it will skip, England in terms of details. You moved to England in 2000, and a year later, you live in England, which is not that very cold. I lived in England for many years. You go to Canada, which in winter it freezes like there's no tomorrow. Why?
It was more a question of opportunity. Canada is a country that attracts a lot of immigrants, particularly in the professional category. So as a family, we felt it presented a bigger opportunity in career advancement than England did at the time. In retrospect, were we right or not? I don't know. Crying over spilled milk doesn't bring back the milk.
Absolutely.
But we did make the move. And we did, as a family, as best as we could, and made a good life out of it, despite the cold temperatures. The snow and the shoveling of snow, which I can't do anymore now because old age has dictated that there are certain things I can't do.
You mentioned a very important word, Joseph, opportunity. How do you see an opportunity? There are a lot of people who want to go in the diaspora, even those who don't want to go in the diaspora. How do you see the opportunity and take advantage of the opportunity?
Well, you need to do a bit of research to begin with, and have a conviction of courage that I can do this even in this new environment, and go with that courage to take that challenge and achieve that challenge. Nobody will be able to, other than when you are appointed, nobody else is going to see an opportunity and give it to you just like that. You have to work for it yourself. But as I said, you need to be convinced yourself that I can meet the challenges that this opportunity requires, and go head on and meet that challenge.
Let's very briefly and quickly talk about the good in terms of governance that you have picked from being in the diaspora, England, but especially, Canada, that if assuming you are in a position of influence here, you would say, you know what, that's something, that I can transport and bring it to my country?
Most of my working life in Canada I spent in the public service. Canada, Ontario, the province we live in terms of size, Ontario is about the same size as Zambia. But it's a very rich province. I mean, one of the ministries I worked in, the Ministry of Health, the annual budget just for the Ministry of Health was, and I'm talking about 8 years back now, was something like 40 billion. So it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I was exposed to a lot of how public service at that level operates. And I think my experience in the public service there is something which I think I would be able to share with my countrymen here as to how we can improve or restructure the public service here. There's a lot of potential in restructuring the public service so that it can deliver the services to the people in a more efficient manner. And one of the ways is to leverage technology, which, as I said, I was able to practice firsthand in how you can use technology to deliver services to the people as a public sector employee.
I know you made a lot of friends in Canada. One person you were very close to is Chisanga Putachekwe. Value addition to your career, to your family?
Chisanga
in Canada?
Well, Chisanga is like the big brother I never had. Right from our landing in Canada, he came to the airport to meet my family and I. So his role, both in my professional work in Canada and my wife, for that matter, he played an instrumental part. He made us what we were in Canada, and is one of the few people who really offered himself to assist any Zambian who was ready and willing to approach him for any assistance. He is, even to this moment as we speak, very willing to assist, and a very accomplished public servant. He worked at the highest level in the public service in Ontario, and has a wealth of knowledge. I don't know how many of his books you have read. He's written books about how we can move the Zambian economy forward, and the things we can do. So Zambia is still very dear to him, like most of us. You never leave the heart in the diaspora. The heart is always here at home.
Do you tend to feel there should be a deliberate policy by the government to reach out to people like Sanga, to other amazing people in the diaspora, can make a difference to our country?
Yes, and I believe there was a conference. Is it 2 years
in Livingston?
In Livingston, some time back. I don't know. I would not claim to know what progress has been made following that conference. But look, Zambia as a country invested a lot in educating us as Zambians, myself included. My scholarship was government sponsored. So the people of Zambia made an investment in me. That investment is what allowed me to go and work in England, to go and work in Canada. And there are many Zambians like that in all sorts of fields where they are operating at the very top. And I can assure you that 98% of them are willing to do whatever they can for this country. And therefore, we need to use the knowledge they have. I like to use the phrase knowledge mining. We need to mine the knowledge that all these Zambians all over the world have for the betterment of this country. Because as I said, after all, this country already invested in them. They put money in them. There's not one single person who's abroad who did not benefit from the resources of this country. Right. So I think there should be a deliberate policy to reach out to professionals in the diaspora. As I said earlier when we were talking about the Bretton Woods institutions, reach out to these people and let's have this discussion to see what we can do with them without necessarily paying other experts.
Right. Two last questions, in 2 minutes. One person you have been flying with all over the world. You met her at Zambia with your beautiful wife, mother to your wonderful children. How has Frida, your wife, impacted your life?
First and foremost, I think being a friend. We've always been good friends.
Yeah.
Not that we don't fight. In fact, probably it's the fights that have kept us together, because you worry about this one we can fight and still talk afterwards. Yeah. Maybe the next one will beat me up. So we've always been good friends, and we've supported each other professionally. We've never put any barriers in our partner's ability to develop where opportunity arose to develop. She's never put any barriers in my way in terms of my development. So we've always encouraged each other, and always when necessary we've sat down to make decisions as a couple, which we both believe in. For example, our decision we've now been put out to pasture, let's go back home. So we made that decision together that we are better off at home than anywhere else.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you that question. You come at a time when the country is going through a very challenging times. It's a bold decision that you made.
Home is home.
Yeah.
A lot of people will say, why are you coming back, particularly this time? But how are people here surviving?
Yeah.
People are living in Zambia.
Yeah.
So the same way the people like you and other colleagues are surviving, we hope you'll be welcoming enough to say, no, don't do that, do this.
Yeah.
And hopefully that will make us settle down and survive just like everybody else.
Yeah, I'm going to say something which I hope I'm not misunderstood. Isn't it wonderful to come back home when you're still alive and then being brought home in a coffin? It's a very difficult thing to say, but I thought I should say it.
It does happen. Unfortunately, people do die abroad, and yes, they are brought back as human remains, and it's very sad. But like I said, when we're talking about our colleagues, for some reason, God has been kind to us.
Yeah.
He has given us this opportunity to go out there.
Yeah.
And still be able to come back here in one piece, and hopefully even in retirement be able to contribute a little bit to Mother Zambia. It's one thing working outside Zambia. It's another thing being retired outside Zambia.
Absolutely.
And that's where the key decision is.
Yeah.
I'm retired now. I'm better retired in Zambia than anywhere else.
Finally, we've talked about your wonderful wife, your children, the impact. As we end, you're going to miss them. So you'll be globetrotting again.
Yeah, well, we have run our race, as it were. Not completely. Hopefully we have a few more years. They have their race to run.
Yeah.
We'll let them do that.
Joe, thank you very much for being on One-on-One. We've come a long way. Joe and I, we started the media long back, 53 years now. My journey continues, on Prime TV and indeed in my career. And by the way, I've started my Facebook 10 days down the line. We've already got 6,000 followers. Away from that, thank you very much on behalf of my guest, Joseph Shamatutu. This has been One-on-One, and remember, God planted you here for a reason. Love this country. There's no other better country. On behalf of my crew at Prime TV, and indeed on behalf of my guest, Joseph Shamatutu, I'm Frank Mutubela. God bless you.